Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Ask Pastor Keith. Pastor Keith, how are you?
I'm doing fine, thanks.
Good.
How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Well, I'm excited because this is my first time, so I'm excited to hear what you have to share. But today we have a question, and the question is, what's the difference between the gift of tongues, like glossolalia, and being supernaturally gifted, the ability to speak a foreign language?
All right, that's actually very simple. That is, glossalia is actually the Greek word for tongue, physical tongue, just like English. But it has a connotation of being a language or, a dialect, and even utterance of any kind. So we know that other mystery religion and all that, they had tongues, ecstatic utterance, and things like that. In my own opinion, there are differences, but in my own opinion, Bible doesn't have any gift of being able to speak foreign language. Oftentimes, Acts chapter 2 is misinterpreted. In my opinion, there are people disagree, and I respect that as well. But I think this misinterpreted chapter 2 of Acts, because when you consider what happened in that place, a physical place, it is more likely is gift of interpretation. And I want to explain that because there is no place, Bible talks about after Peter's preaching, 3,000 became believers. But there are other people who didn't become believers. They're laughing at them as these guys are drunk and all that kind of things.
Right.
So putting all together, it's safe to assume about 4,000 to 5,000 people congregated in that place. There is no place in all Jerusalem that 4,000 to 5,000 people can congregate, except Temple Court. Even that is pretty, crowded. And it's a Gentiles court. That's the only thing available to hold that amount of people. And, when people says, these guys are drunk and all that, and many people just assume that these people are uneducated, unsophisticated. That's not true. These are Jerusalem residents. Every few months, people from all over the world come in because of feasts and holidays. Right. And these are the Jews, they live in entire Greco-Roman Empire, from Assyria, the modern day, most of Iraq, all the way to Turkey and beyond, the Macedonia and Greece. And they come and speak all kind of language. They're used to it because just because somebody speaks Chinese or German, we don't think they're drunk. So there is the utterance being spoken. And imagine all people gathering randomly and spontaneously. So the people from same region don't congregate together. They're all over. As I said, it's a packed. And there are 120 people in the upper room who's been filled with the Holy Spirit, and they are like, there's no PA system. So they are all scattered across and spontaneously speaking tongue. And therefore, some people who didn't really get the interpretation of tongue gifts, they just assume that these guys just gibberishing. This doesn't mean any, they are drunk. On the other hand, the people from, modern day Iraq and people from, Greece, Athens, and Corinth, and those areas. In fact, they're not there yet because the mission hasn't happened yet. But large part of Turkey and all. And so these people come together and they're hearing it in their own language. Bible is very specific that they did not speak in their language, but they heard it their own language. In fact, they were wondering, how come I'm standing here and the next guy is from another place? He's hearing it in his own language. I'm hearing it on my language. And there's other people who are saying, hey, this guy is drunk. It doesn't make any sense. So in chapter 2 of book of Acts, seems like it's more of an interpretational gift rather than being able to speak certain language from certain region without learning how to speak the language. So Paul goes on to say in chapter 14 of 1 Corinthians, he's explained there are a couple of tongues here. One is you speak mysterious mystery to God, and no one understands, including the one who's speaking.
Right.
And Paul also said, I pray in tongue more than all of you, and I wish all of you speak in tongue. But in the setting of worship, I rather you prophesy rather than, speak in tongues.
Right.
Because that's for your prayer and personal edification. And so he's talking about that. So and then yet there is also the tongue that is prophetic tongue. That's not for your own consumption, so to speak. That's not for your own prayer life, but that is actually for the other people to listen. And that tongue needs to be interpreted in the context of worship.
Right.
And in order to make sense for everybody, right? And so there are several tongues, and these tongues usually mean, as I said before, glossalia in Greek definition is just physical tongue. And just like English, tongue also means language. And so it means language and dialogue. In this case, it's utterance, ecstatic utterance. That's what it means. And so what is the difference? There is no difference. But is there cases in Christian history that people spoke another language without learning that language? Yes, there are plenty. In the mission fields, we have seen that, especially at the beginning, after Azusa Street movement, there are some. And there are some recordings of Catharies, the French kind of precursor of Puritans, and their children speaking tongue, the language they have not learned. And also, one of the most well-known one is, I think, is St. Thomas. I could be wrong. St. Thomas is the father of monastic movement. And he had a visitor from Rome who only spoke Latin. So he had that person wait, and he turned around and he spoke in tongue for a couple of hours. And then after that, he turned around and spoke fluent Latin and being able to converse with that person for 2-3 hours. So we have historical, record of such. But as far as in Bible, do we see that special supernatural ability to speak another language without learning? In my own opinion, there's no such. Because I think Acts chapter 2 is often misinterpreted in that way. And so gift of tongue is for prayer, for prophetic uses and all that. So that's what the gift of tongue is. It's not that complicated. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you for that insight, Pastor Keith.
Okay.
Well, but I guess the follow-up question would be then is, should we practice the gift of tongues like in public prayer meetings?
Yeah, it's a prayer meeting where believers are gathered together. That's fine.
Yeah.
Paul's concern was, actually the word he used is idiotes, where we get idiots. But that's not what he meant. Idiotes means uninitiated ones, people who are not instructed concerning these matters. And when these people come in the worship, they're going to say you are mad, and it doesn't make any sense. Right. So that's what he was talking about. But in the prayer, the gathering of believers who are initiated or instructed in this matter as a prayer meeting, yes, you can. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Pastor Keith, for that insight. And thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of Ask Pastor Keith. We hope to see you again next week. Bye-bye.